More than a decade ago, Nassau County spent about $100 million to preserve some of its last remaining swaths of open space. Many of the purchases are celebrated today, but a number of them also benefited political insiders or remain essentially hidden from the larger public that paid for them. We're here at Parkway Drive, which is one of about 24 properties that Nassau County bought under its 2004 and 2006 Environmental Bond Acts. And part of the selling of this process was making these open space acquisitions accessible to the public. As you'll see here, this one is not quite. This fence has been up for a number of years, big dead-end sign. They did not, at least so far, live up to the promise that they made when they bought it, that it would be a benefit to the public. In this case, the county says that some concerns from residents about security, parking, and then also county concerns about keeping the property maintained have led to, its state as fenced off from public access. But at the time, some of the people that were proponents of buying this property envisioned maybe a kayak launch. We're right along the canal and the bay here. We're in an area known as Baldwin Harbor, and some people saw a great public benefit to this, but at least till now, it's not something that has come to fruition. On the other end of the county, in Cove, the county spent nearly $5 million for a plot of woods, including $600,000 for land owned by someone who worked at the time as a political appointee of the county executive. We're coming up on Red Spring Woods, which is the name for property about 11 acres in size that was purchased in 2 installments over the 2 bond acts. It's basically 11 acres of wooded property that kind of are ringed by residential homes. It's kind of, an unmaintained woods. There's some trash disposed here. The county has talked about not being able to really maintain these properties as part of the reason they never enhanced access fully. I can imagine that this would be a very popular hiking spot for county residents, if they knew about it, and if the county had cut some kind of trail system in here and promoted it, but it was something that was never done. In Millneck, another affluent North Shore village, the county spent $8 million for 25 acres of the estate belonging to the late Adele Smithers, a noted philanthropist but also a political campaign contributor. Defenders of the Bond Acts note that these kinds of properties receive priority not because they were owned by the politically connected, but because of their environmental features and location in a special groundwater protection area. But they also were zoned in a way that meant their preservation spared development only on a modest scale. It's called the Upper Francis Pond Preserve. It does have public access. That sign, which does, promote it off the main road, was a little hard to find, but we found it. But this site is perhaps less of an issue of access and more of an issue of, how money was spent in the program. Because again, it's indisputably a beautiful property, has a pond on it. The county was able to preserve this land and stop 3 or 4 homes being built. There were other areas on the South Shore and elsewhere in the county where for the same amount of money they could have bought, granted smaller size property in terms of acres, but properties probably stopped the development of dozens and dozens of homes. So this was one of the things that was debated. It was the issue of, when you're buying this property, if stopping the development was the biggest concern, then could it be spent better elsewhere? Like in Cove, a few miles further east along the North Shore, in Oyster Bay Cove, the county created a new, about 30-acre public preserve by patching together portions of 3 private estates at a cost of more than $11 million. The sellers either had political or family connections to county officials or were backers of the nonprofit that played a role in recommending what properties to purchase under the Bond Acts. They call it the Red Coat Preserve. It's in Oyster Bay Cove, which is a very exclusive incorporated village. The county, in creating this preserve, said that they would make it open to the public and accessible. And in this case, unlike some of the others that are fenced off, this is actually open to the public. The one issue is people knowing about it. The most prominent entry point to this property is right off the corner here of Route 25A, but there's no actual sign to let anyone know. The county did put in this parking lot, but they never did some of the other things they promised in terms of access and promotion. One was they never put up
full fencing around the boundary, which you see there's some, but it doesn't go all the length of the property. 2, they never put in a large entryway kiosk and informational center that would let people know it's here. For years, the Redcoat Preserve had no sign identifying it as a public space, but officials added a small one earlier this year after I started interviewing them for this story. Within the last 3 or 4 weeks, after we last shot video there, they put up in the preserve a kiosk with a property map and some information on its wildlife.